Hello, Texas Stonewall Democrats. I'm Robert Vargas III, and I get the good privilege of being the president of this amazing organization. And we're just so glad to be here tonight. We've got an exciting program. Joining us for the first part is going to be Representative Vikkie Goodwin, Courtney Head, and Marcos Velez, who are running for lieutenant governor. So we're going to be hearing about their vision for Texas and how they plan to make a positive impact, not just on our great state, but also on LGBTQ plus Texans. And then after that, we're going to be joined by Representative Gina Hinojosa and Bobby Cole, who are both running for governor. They want to take on Greg Abbott in the November election. So the way that the evening is going to work is that we are going to give them each 1 minute to give an intro. We'll start with Representative Goodwin and then Mr. Velez. And then after we do that, we're going to ask them a few questions. And so if you have any questions for them, please jump on in and ask them. You can comment on social media, comment on Facebook, whether you're watching on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok. So let's jump right on in. We've got with us Representative Vikkie Goodwin. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Robert.
Oh, thank you so much. I know you're traveling across the state. So take about a minute, introduce yourself to our community, and tell us why you're running for governor.
State Representative Vikkie Goodwin from the Austin area. I have been in the legislature since 2018. I flipped the seat then, and now I'm ready to flip a statewide seat. Lieutenant Governor is not your friend, and he wants the 10 commandments on classroom walls, but he doesn't want to put the resources, the dollars into the classrooms that we need. Public education is huge in my mind. Healthcare is huge. I am an ally with the LGBTQ community, have fought back against many of the bills that have come before the legislature and want to continue serving as your next lieutenant governor.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll be asking you some tough questions here in a minute. So hang out with us. And we're going to bring on with us Mr. Marcos Velez, who's also running for lieutenant governor. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Please tell us why you're running for governor or lieutenant governor.
My name is Marcos Velez. I am a labor activist. I work for the United Steelworkers International Union, fighting multinational corporations every day. In the 1970s, the Coors Brewing Company had some of the most discriminatory practices in the United States. They used polygraph tests to target the LGBTQ plus community. It led to labor allying with LGBTQ plus allies or activists to actually push the needle and force the stop of those practices. But even today, we still see discrimination and targeting of all working people, but largely the LGBTQ plus community is affected at a higher percentage. So I'm running for lieutenant governor because I believe in a Texas that works for everyone, where everyone can pay their bills, where everyone can have security, and where everyone can live safely and not feel like they have to leave the state because they're being targeted for political theater.
No, that's excellent. It's really important to have labor representation, so we appreciate you running. Let me ask you the first question. What do you see as the primary role of the lieutenant governor? Everyone hears about the governor and what they do. So tell me, what do you feel is the primary role?
Sure. Look, the lieutenant governor's primary role is to prioritize legislation that benefits the masses. We have not had a lieutenant governor that prioritizes the masses as long as I've been alive. And so I believe we need a lieutenant governor that's going to choose bills that need to be signed into law that actually benefit working Texans, bills that fund schools, bills that raise wages. The minimum wage needs to be raised, bills that actually lower the cost of living and expand affordable housing. Look, I could go on, but the prioritization of bills that actually benefit the masses.
No, absolutely. Representative Goodwin, I'll ask you the same question. What do you feel is the primary role of the lieutenant governor?
Well, of course, it is prioritizing what we should be doing in the legislature. The lieutenant governor decides what bills come before the Senate, and the lieutenant governor also appoints committee chairs, which is incredibly important. To get a bill passed through the Senate, it has to go through the committee structure. The lieutenant governor also decides who sits on what committees, and when a bill is filed, the lieutenant governor decides which committee it goes to. He or she has a lot of power to allow bills to move forward, to get to the House. And really, it's the most powerful position, because if we're trying to change policies to improve the lives of Texans, it does have to go through the lieutenant governor before it reaches the governor.
All right. And let me ask both of you this question, and we'll let Mr. Velez answer. Is when you're prioritizing bills, Mr. Velez, how do you feel like you're going to approach that?
Sure. So obviously, we need bills that are going to address the issues that are impacting everyday Texans. Right now, the only thing that's being addressed is corporate interest and political theater that targets the most marginalized people in our society. So obviously, I intend to focus on bills that are going to raise wages. There are 30 states that have a higher minimum wage than the state of Texas, and we have the 8th largest economy in the world. We need to prioritize bills that are going to increase opportunity for young people. All too often, young people find themselves in an economy that has left them behind. There's a lot of rhetoric about immigrants stealing jobs. The reality is your job was stolen by bad trade deals and shipped overseas. Your job was stolen by AI. Your job was not stolen by a human being. We need to prioritize bills that are going to increase people's access to affordable housing. And we need to prioritize bills that are going to protect people's rights, not erode them and leave them without dignity.
And I'll ask you the same question, Representative Goodwin. How do you feel that you're going to prioritize bills? Obviously, the lieutenant governor is very powerful in that. Tell us about your vision on that.
Absolutely. Well, for me, for people to have the opportunity to have a good job, they have to have a good education. And so we have been underfunding our schools, defunding our schools. The governor and lieutenant governor passed the voucher scam last session. When I am lieutenant governor, I will not allow a budget to pass that has even $1 to go towards private schools. That's my number one. Number two is healthcare. People, Texas is a prosperous state, and yet we have the highest rate of uninsured. So we need to figure out a program, whether it's expanding Medicaid, whether it is creating our own state program, a risk pool for those people who aren't covered by their employers. But even the employer plans aren't great. We know that people oftentimes end up resorting to creating GoFundMe pages to pay for their health care. That's not right. There are ways that we can improve the system. I'm on the insurance committee this session, and we had some opportunities, but we didn't do anything to really improve people's ability to go see a doctor affordably. So affordability is a huge issue. I have filed bills session after session to raise the minimum wage. I agree that that is part of addressing the affordability issue, is making sure people are making good wages. You raise all boats when you lift the minimum wage. So that's critically important. Housing affordability is another issue. That issue came before us in the legislative session this time, but their solutions are the wrong solutions. We can do a lot towards housing affordability, but we know that when we don't have enough supply and demand is high, prices go up. We don't have enough supply right now, in particular because we are deporting our workforce. 50% of our workforce may be undocumented when it comes to house construction. And so we've got to do something about that issue. We should have a program that allows workers that we need here in the state of Texas. And then finally, water is a huge issue with the massive increase in the number of data centers coming to Texas. We need to make sure that we're planning for our water future, also with the growth of the population. We just passed a water fund, but we need to make sure we're doing it in a smart way so that we're conserving, reusing, and fixing our leaky pipes, not just new water projects, but a combination of all of the above.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You went right into our next question. I appreciate it. Courtney is joining us as well. She's also running for lieutenant governor. Courtney, Representative Goodwin told us about her budgetary priorities. Tell us, what do you feel are your budgetary priorities as we're going into this legislative session in about a minute or so?
Absolutely. So thank you for having us on. I think that the biggest priorities for the Texas budget are going to be centered around refunding our public education. So I also want to preface this by Texas is a very wealthy state, and we have the money and we have the opportunity. So when we want to allocate resources, we need to look at what we have existing. We have billions of dollars worth of funds, but we also need to look at expanding opportunity. And so that would include creating a regulated and legalized cannabis market, that would include expanding renewables, which would create about 200,000 jobs, and also strengthening our grid infrastructure. So these expenses will be decreased on all Texans and our system as a whole. And we also want to, in my opinion, we need to look at opportunities to decrease spending on the school infrastructure when it comes to maintenance and systems. And so expanding renewables there would also be beneficial in decreasing the cost of the overhead for the operations of our public schools, and then putting that funding right back into our teachers and our students.
All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Velez, I want to give you an opportunity to touch base a little bit on what your budgetary priorities would be as we look at this funding of this great state of Texas.
Hey, so when you look at funding, I don't think it's very far off from what Ms. Courtney said. We have to fund public education. We carry a surplus over, and we've carried one over for quite some time. It's not a funding issue, it's a prioritization issue. So we have to fund public schools, and that means funding teacher salaries. Teachers should not be working 2 and 3 jobs. We need to fund teacher retirement. We shouldn't shy away from the fact that if you spend your entire life educating the next generation, you should be able to retire with dignity and at an age where you're still young enough to enjoy what's left of your life. Once we get beyond that, look, infrastructure. We have to invest in our communities. Some of our most underserved communities have some of the worst roads, the worst electrical structure. We have some serious issues, and we have the talent in the state to get that done. Investing in infrastructure obviously creates jobs. It helps families pay their bills. And then the other thing is the state should invest in ensuring that there's affordable housing. We can focus on programs that actually increase the housing supply and without shifting the entire burden to the community. And then once we get beyond that, we also have to look at investing in programs like HUB, where we stripped away everything except for support for veterans. We need to make sure that we have those programs available so that we can support not just the communities, but small businesses and just about every other facet of normal working America's communities.
Well, I appreciate that. And as you're talking about budgeting, I know we've talked about a lot of stuff. I believe a couple of folks mentioned funding for mental health. As you know, we have an increased amount of homeless population because of the lack of mental health funding that's out there. You know, folks, families aren't able to take care of folks. Then our county jails become the biggest provider of mental health facilities. And that's because the state has defunded a lot of our state hospitals and those types of things. So what is going to be your approach to mental health?
Look, in a perfect world, and I'm not ashamed to say this, I think we'd have a single payer system where everyone could get the health care that they need. In the interim, we have to invest heavily in mental health support. I think a lot of people fail to realize that when they talk about gun violence, a large leading cause of gun deaths amongst children are suicides. And then the LGBTQ community is disproportionately affected by this as well, due to a lack of resources and due to other social issues that exist that we need to address as a state. These are people's lives. These are people's realities. And so funding for healthcare, mental health resources all have to be at the top of the budget.
Absolutely. And I'll ask Courtney the same question next. Courtney, Ms. Head, what is your approach to mental health funding?
Yeah, so I think that we do have to support and uplift mental health crises, and that has to start at the community level. But when we think about the picture of mental health, uh, we cannot respond reactively. And a lot of these issues with mental health stem from predispositions that are already occurring. So it could be a financial stress, right? It could be a housing insecurity, food insecurity. There's so many different factors that funnel into what can be caused as into a mental health crisis for an individual. So obviously, we're talking about expanding funding for healthcare, and that includes mental health, but also expanding community resources. So we need to make sure that people have food security, housing security, healthcare security, and work security. They're able to find high-paying, reliable jobs, and we're not going to do that without expanding infrastructure, and expanding industries into renewables and into I think a strong cannabis regulated market will also expand rural and urban job infrastructures. And so we have to look at the entire picture because we can't respond to a mental health crisis and just say, oh, okay, well, we're going to expand mental health response and that's going to fix the issue. It's more systemic than that. You have to look at the kind of all the dominoes that are into the effect of why someone has a mental health crisis.
But can I ask you, we're going kind of around and around, but I do want to ask, like, specifically for mental health funding, because that is a
Yes.
major thing. What do you have any thoughts for building a plan for creating that funding?
Absolutely. We can, my personal opinion, we should be proposing legislation to expand Medicaid and Medicare. And also, we can create legislation to expand mental health access within the county. So, right, we could set up countywide systems. And those would be proportional to the population size and the need of the county. We would want to make sure that every county has the appropriate response. But proposing legislation to have countywide crisis to maybe create more grants for Texas public universities and colleges for mental health professions, right, would be a start to have more access. And then providing grants to communities or community organizations that are centered
Right.
around that.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that. I want to kind of move us along a little bit for time, but thank you for expanding on that.
Absolutely.
Representative Goodwin, you've been in the fight for a very long time, and I think that where people get frustrated is or where what people want to know is, what are the actual solutions for creating funding or resources for mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the resources are there. We just need different leadership. So when I came into the legislature in 2019, there was a huge conversation around mental health funding. We created the Mental Health Consortium at that time and created different objectives. One of those objectives is to have psychiatrists from universities helping our school counselors, so that when a student on a school campus has a crisis, they had someone they could reach out to help them figure out what help is needed for that child. After the Uvalde school shooting, the legislature put more money into what's called T-Chat, which is that program where you connect a psychiatrist to a school counselor. Unfortunately, when I spoke to some of my superintendents, they said that wasn't what they wanted. They need more people, more mental health counselors on the school campus would be more beneficial. But also in conversations with the psychiatrist, I found out that their funding was cut unexpectedly. So the legislature creates these funds that are supposed to be dispersed to solve this problem, mental health being the one that we're talking about right now, but they make the hurdles to get the money very difficult, or they cut funding all of a sudden. I spoke to a woman that just this week, her daughter runs Nexus, which is an addiction treatment center up in North Texas. They just had their funding cut unexpectedly. So the state has the dollars, we have the resources, but unfortunately our current leadership is not sending the resources out in a way that's needed. And so that's the number one issue. We have a lot of programs around the state that are addressing the mental health needs, but they need to have reliable funding that doesn't require jumping through a bunch of hoops.
Very good. Thank you. And as we're talking about pulling this funding together and getting everyone to work together to make this happen, obviously you need independents and Republicans and Democrats. So not just in your campaign, but in the legislature, will you build coalitions across Texas to help you get the work done as a lieutenant governor? Because obviously you need votes on the floor, right, in order to make things happen.
Absolutely. I mean, I have been doing that work already, building those relationships. I've come across many groups working on these issues as I've been in the legislature. So the Texas Doctors for Social Responsibility decided that gun violence prevention would be one of their primary issues, and they came to the Capitol and testified. And I worked with them to let them know how their advocacy can be used best to get these bills passed. I also actually passed a mental health bill with Senator Bob Hall. He's a Republican from North Texas. We passed an expansion of a treatment therapy called 5NP, which is similar to acupuncture, but it's only 5 needles in the ear. And the way that we were able to get this bill passed in one session is that we had veterans come and testify in favor of this treatment therapy that's been used when they come back from Afghanistan or from being sent abroad. And so I've already had the experience of working with networks throughout the state, working with my colleagues in the House and Senate, and getting things done when it comes to mental health and other issues.
All right. I'll ask you this, Mr. Velez, as we're talking about mental health, we're talking about working together with folks. I know you're a labor guy, so you probably have some experience. Tell us a little bit about that experience and working across the aisle, getting stuff done, and how you plan on working with both independents and Republicans.
Yeah, so look, I do that every single day. I think there's a fine line between collaboration and capitulation. We can collaborate on ideas that benefit our communities. I refuse to capitulate to their BS and the ideas that they've been floating. Every single day, I bargain with some of the largest multinational corporations in the world. We are always in a minority because the reality is there's a very real chance that I win this lieutenant governor's race and we have a Republican governor. As much as that sickens me, as much as that thought makes me want to just like, but the reality is it could happen. And so every single day I will go in there and stand firm in my convictions, but I will also use the public to hold the representatives accountable, because if we can't move a bill that's good for working class people, shame on us for not communicating to the public what our goals are and ensuring that the constituents are pressuring their elected representatives to move that bill. We have a program like that we use in organized labor. If we want something to move, we'll notify all of our members. And if your phone is ringing off the hook all day, every single day, I'm sure Representative Goodwin will tell you, hey, it's not fun. It moves people. It motivates them to get off their rear end and get things done. And so, look, I plan to collaborate when it's beneficial to working Texans, and I plan to hold the line and use the public to pressure our representatives to push bills that they otherwise wouldn't want to act on, and ensure that we have a clear narrative on what we're trying to do so that people understand what's actually going on.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Head, I'll ask you the same question. How do you plan on working across the aisle with Republicans and independents to get stuff done in the Texas legislature?
Absolutely. And for your benefit, I don't necessarily have the government experience in negotiating. However, I do that in the real world for my job every day, negotiating with big business partners. And so I have to find a middle ground. And that's where you have to really connect with these individuals. And like Marcus was saying, I fully intend to use the public as an avenue of the negotiation. If someone's being obstinate on the floor and simply just not voting for something because they do not want to, I'm going to make sure their constituents know, especially with mental health that affects, I would say, everybody. If anybody thinks that they are immune from the psychology of mental health crises and needs. That's not the case. I guarantee you that every representative in the Senate floor has a constituent that has had a mental health crisis. And being able to bring those public stories, and have them testify on the floor as to why they need this help, and having their representative answer that would be critical. I think that, like many of us in Texas, we want these barriers from public policymaking to be brought down between Texas governance and the people. And that's exactly what I would tend to do to get across the aisle and to get things done. I'm going to use the help of the public.
Very good. And, I wouldn't be a good gay if I didn't ask, what is your plan to protect LGBTQ plus Texans? As you know, Republicans like to use our trans brothers, sisters, and siblings as punching bags, and so what is your message? Take about a minute and tell us, what is your message to my brothers, sisters, and siblings out there that are frankly scared for their lives, and some of them are even trying to find a way to leave the state?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have many family and friends who are part of that community. I myself am part of that community. And what I would say to you is I'm going to fight for every right that you're entitled to. I will defend it to the last line, because your civil liberties are not a game and you are not a punching bag. And there's no reason to have this visceral hate of people. I think that, yourself as a gay man, have seen how, you know, disgusting this hate can be towards this community. And a lot of it stems from self-hate, right? Because they have their own issues with their own sexuality. That is a very common theme that I have seen in my life. And so I will do everything in my power to ensure that there's legislation protecting our LGBTQA plus individuals and ensuring that they have equal rights as they should.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you saying that. Representative Goodwin, I will ask you the same question. How are you going to protect our community, fight for them? You know, I always say the gays, we're like Santa Claus. We do exist.
Yeah, you know, as I was listening, I was thinking in the back of my mind, do we have any LGBTQ members in the Senate? I don't think we do, but we do in the House. So my very good friends, Representative Jessica Gonzalez, Mary Gonzalez, Aaron Zwiener, Vinton Jones, have all worked very hard to protect your community. And I have been an ally in that fight. You know,
That's okay. We'll give her a moment to get her phone together. All right.
Sorry about
Yeah, go right ahead.
Sorry about that. My phone freaked out. Anyway, I have been an ally and will continue to be an ally. We thought that we had quashed the bathroom bill issue and then it came back. We have these zombie bills that unless we change things in the House and Senate and Lieutenant Governor's office this election cycle, they'll continue to bash down the LGBTQ community. And I will not stand for that. When I am your Lieutenant Governor, I will stand up for your community because we're all in this together.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And the same question for you, Mr. Velez. What would you like to say to your potential LGBTQ plus voters who are trying to decide whether or not you're the right guy for them?
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to say that very proud to announce that yesterday I was endorsed by the Houston LGBTQ plus caucus, honored to carry that endorsement. Look, in the labor movement, I fight every single day for all working people. I've advocated for workers regardless of their sexual orientation. I arbitrated a case here recently for a man that was terminated solely for his sexual orientation, not because it was popular, not because it brought me political favor. It was in a very conservative union hall with a very conservative group of guys. That man was a human being, and who he loves should have no impact on his continued employment. Proud to say that we won a huge settlement for him. He was returned to work. They had to pay him all of his back pay and some. And that's the kind of work that we do in labor, but that I specifically do because I believe that all people are people and should be treated as such. Beyond that, when you look at like representation matters, and you do have to appoint people that understand and come from the community. So like when you look at the Texas Senate, you have people like Molly Cook, one of the first openly LGBTQ plus senators in the Texas Senate. Those are the kind of people that I would look to give leadership positions so that we can ensure that the community is adequately represented.
I appreciate that. Sir, give us, we'll move on to closing statements. We're going to be talking to our gubernatorial candidates next. So for those of you watching on Facebook, if you have any questions for them, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll encourage our lieutenant governor candidates who are stepping off to go back and feel free to go answer those questions online that have already been posted. But Mr. Velez, give us your closing statement. Say your final thoughts to our community, and then we'll move on to the next race. So go right ahead, sir.
Look, I would be honored to have the support of anybody watching. I believe that we should be able to live in a state where all people can afford to pay their bills. I believe that more important than bills, that Texans are struggling every single day to pay. I believe that all Texans should be able to have gainful employment, regardless of who they love or who they choose to marry. I believe that all Texans should be able to insure their loved ones, and they should be able to do so affordably. I believe that all children should be able to live safely, and people shouldn't have to flee the state simply because of their orientation or their gender assignment. And so I believe that when you're looking for a lieutenant governor, you want someone with a proven track record of fighting for all people, and someone that's not afraid to stand on their convictions, no matter if they're unpopular, if they lose them political favor. And so I would be honored if you guys would go to Velez for Texas and see what I'm about. And like I said, look forward to representing you guys in the Texas Senate.
We appreciate you being here with us tonight. We appreciate you taking time to answer questions from LGBTQ plus Texans. Sir, you have a good night. We're going to go with Courtney Head. She's been with us this evening answering questions and talking about her plan for Texas. Courtney, give us your closing thoughts this evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much for putting this on. My closing thoughts for anyone listening is, please research your candidates. I really hope that we are able to connect. Please reach out to me. I really feel that we need to move Texas forward. We need to have a big push and a generational change and progressive policies. And I am ready to be a bulldog in the Senate. I'm ready to run this legislature ragged and get all of the progressive policies that we need to push Texas forward, to be able to sustain and to grow and live a prosperous life here in Texas for all. And so please reach out to me via email at courtney.head at Texas for All Texans, or go to my website, Texas for All Texans.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Courtney. Representative Goodwin, we appreciate your time. It looks like you're out on the road, you're out and about, but what is it that you want folks to know before you head out?
I want you to know that this is such a critical election cycle. This is a 4-year term. We must have a new lieutenant governor going into the next legislative session in order to support your community, but all communities across the state, to make sure that we save our public schools. They're being defunded right now, and we're spending all this money on a private voucher program to make sure that people can get the health care they need, whether it's mental health care, whether it's women being able to get their own reproductive health care. We need to make sure things are affordable, housing, childcare. And we need to pay attention to water issues. I support the LGBTQ community. I have a proven track record of doing everything I can to defend the community on the House floor, and I would like to do that now in the Senate. It's important to look at the candidates and their ability to face off against Dan Patrick when it comes to the general election. I believe I'm the candidate that can do it. I've been building relationships all across the state over the last several years, and I am determined that we must flip this lieutenant governor seat, and I'm the one that can do it. Thank you. Goodwin for Texas.
Thank you so much for being with us this evening, Representative Goodwin. You have a good night and safe travels out there.
Thank you.
All right. What a fun evening. We are asking questions. And I say it's a fun evening because if you're watching this social media broadcast, it's because you're like me. You're just a nerd for politics. And so I appreciate you all joining us. So great candidates for lieutenant governor. I know voters have a difficult choice to make as we go into the November election. And so actually, I should say in the March primary, what did I say? I'm already jumping ahead. I don't know that I'm quite ready for the November election. We got some decisions to make first. But this evening, we're going to continue with our gubernatorial candidates. We've got two great folks that are joining us today. It's Representative Gina Hinojosa and Bobby Cole, who are running for governor. What we're going to do going forward this evening is, before I bring them on, I'm going to show you their commercial. Both Mr. Cole and Representative Hinojosa have some phenomenal commercials. So we're going to bring them in. I'm going to show their commercial and then let them do their 1-minute introduction. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments and we'll go from there. So we're going to start off with Representative Gina Hinojosa. Check this out.
No te dejes. Fight back. That's the lesson my grandmother taught me growing up right here in the Valley. In my hardest fights, I'd hear her voice tell me, no te dejes. My name is Gina Hinojosa, and I'm running for governor of Texas. Our fight right now is against the billionaires and the corporations who are driving up prices, closing our neighborhood schools, and cheating Texans out of basic health care. That's who Greg Abbott works for. I'm running for governor to work for you. I came up in Brownsville public schools where no one had much money, but we had a strong sense of family and community. When I started my own family, we built our lives around those same values. They tried to shut down my son's school. No te dejes. I ran for school board and I won the seat, then I won the fight. We kept that school open, but Abbott spent tax dollars meant for our schools on payouts to his donors. So I ran for the State House. And once I got there, we won a historic investment in Texas public schools. Don't mess with Texas moms. The challenge now is that Abbott's corruption runs deep, and the billionaires he works for will not stop until they get what they want. Abbott devastated our schools when he passed his voucher scam, and he took $6 million from an out-of-state billionaire dead set on defunding public education. So long as we have a governor who can be bought, we won't have the Texas that we deserve. I'm fighting back. I'm running to take on the corruption and take back our state, and I'm asking you to join me. We can win good-paying jobs for every hard-working Texan, quality, affordable health care in our own communities, safe streets, and yes, neighborhood schools that offer a great education by teachers who are allowed to teach. We can do this. We're Texans. We do hard things, and we've never been afraid of a fight. No te dejes. It's time to fight and win.
All right, Representative Hinojosa. Let me tell you, I'm ready for a fight. I'm in it. I don't even need coffee. I'm going to watch that tomorrow morning. How are you today? All right, I think you're muted.
All right, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, ma'am. How are you tonight?
I'm good. You better get ready for November. It's going to be here before you know it.
It really is. It really is. So tell me, let's jump right on in. What is your message to LGBTQ plus Texans?
The message is, look, you're not a fringe group. You're not a marginalized. You are every much Texan and American as the rest of us. And as governor, I will lift you up, respect you, and honor your identity and your contribution to this state. I have spent my legislative career fighting to defend the rights of all Texans, including the LGBTQ community. I was one of the founding members of the LGBTQ caucus. I have filed repeatedly legislation to outlaw the gay panic defense that is used today to excuse violence against the LGBTQ community. And I have been an ally to our caucus in those fights to defend against those attacks on our community. So you will see that same kind of leadership when I am governor of Texas. And right now what we are seeing is Greg Abbott punches down on our LGBTQ community because he is a weak governor and he thinks that makes him look strong. It doesn't. It's unacceptable. We've lost too many Texans because of that hate. I've lost constituents that I've represented who have had to leave the state. It is awful. It needs to stop. It is not what most Texans want, and it will stop when I'm governor.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We're going to intro Bobby Cole, and then we're going to bring you all together so that we can ask questions. Mr. Cole has an equally impressive commercial that I wanted to make sure you all had the opportunity to watch. So let's jump right on in.
You've heard about bulls in a china shop? Well, that's what Greg Abbott's been doing to the people of the state of Texas. Tearing up everything we've built, kissing up to bullies and billionaires who are taking every last dime out of our pockets. Well, I don't give up that easy on farms or people. Weather, disease, inflation, and tariffs can make or break you. And as a young man, I was closer to broke than made. Like a lot of Texans, I needed a second job. For over 20 years, I fought fires, then drove 100 miles back home to work the cows. I've met people who've lost everything, treasured possessions, homes, even their loved ones. I was honored to help them in their darkest hour, and I'm prepared to do it again for the people of Texas. Greg Abbott has let the state go up in flames, threatening families and the lives we built. While we worked hard, he gutted schools, ignored the grid, and stuck his nose in our personal lives. This emergency calls for someone with leadership to unite and the courage to fight. I'm Bobby Cole, and I'm running for governor. For the folks who've been squeezed out and written off. I'll stand up to Trump's extremism and Elon's corporate greed and make damn sure our kids grow up in a state of the people, by the people. Here's my plan. Fund the schools, fix the grid, legalize marijuana, protect Medicare and rural health care, cut taxes. Greg Abbott left us to fight for ourselves. Elect me governor and you'll never fight alone again. So hurry up now and let's take Texas back.
All right, we're taking Texas back. Mr. Cole, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, doing great. Thanks for joining us. Let's jump right on in. What is your message to LGBTQ plus Texans?
Yeah, LGBTQ plus Texans, trans Texans, they're constantly under attack and being vilified. They're targeted with hate, lies, and cruelty, and they're constantly told there's no place in this state for you by the Republicans in this state and the Republican leadership in this state, which rests on Greg Abbott's shoulders. Listen, everyone has a right to be who they are and to love who they want. And the Constitution provides everyone with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I can think of no other ideal that deserves defending more than that. Personally, I'm an advocate for everyone, especially LGBTQ plus Texans, to be able to live amongst their neighbors and to feel accepted and not threatened. I would be your advocate as your governor, and everyone deserves honor and respect and to be able to live their American dream as they see fit.
I appreciate that. Let me ask you a question. We'll go straight in. I'm going to ask you the question, then I'm going to ask Representative Hinojosa the same question. You know, there's a lot of fear right now. You mentioned Elon and Trump and all these folks who are really trying to change the face of our democracy, right? I told somebody the other day, the future of our democracy is really scary because we don't know who's going to be in charge, especially here in Texas. So what does a Texas under Bobby Cole look like?
Well, a Texas under Bobby Cole is it's a place where everyone will have an opportunity to be able to succeed and not held back because of who they are or where they come from. I'm fighting for working Texans, and that is not an exclusatory statement there. Everybody in Texas works, whether they're urban, suburban, or rural. And I absolutely believe everybody has the same concerns, no matter where they live or who they look like or what they believe. They want to be able to get a good job, good pay, be able to raise a family, put a roof over their head, put food on the table. And then when they're done building this state, because everyday ordinary Texans are the true people who built the state, not the billionaires and the corporations, they deserve to be able to retire with dignity one day. And that's what this campaign's about. And that's what I mean. I'm gonna protect and advocate for everybody's liberties, freedoms, and rights and opportunities, especially young people. There's a lot of young people in this state, just like LGBTQ, young women, young families, immigrants that are being forced out of this state. And I don't want to force anybody out. I want to welcome people in because that's where our strength lies.
All right. Representative Hinojosa, tell me, what is a future around with Representative Hinojosa look like, right? What does that Texas look like?
Well, I believe the reason that Greg Abbott punches down at LGBTQ Texans and the reason he's always trying to divide us is to distract us from his grift and corruption. And when I'm governor, we will have a clean slate and fresh start. What I have found in almost 10 years in the Texas House is the system is working against us with our own money. For too long, Democrats have defended a system that is indefensible. And that is why it is time that we just, there aren't like three things to do. It's like everything needs to be scrapped and we need to start fresh and build a Texas that works for the people of Texas and that works as hard as Texans to provide good jobs and a bright future for Texans and their family. So that's why I'm running, because for too long, this state has taken more and more of our money and we get less and less. And that's why our property taxes are skyrocketing, but our schools are shutting down. That's why utility bills have gone up so much because of Greg Abbott's corruption and the tax that we're all paying, his his Greg Abbott corruption tax. That's why healthcare isn't affordable. That list goes on and on and on. And that is because he lines the pockets of the special interests instead of putting the money back into our communities to benefit us.
So I can imagine there are like thousands of things that you could do within the first 100 days, right? Like both of you all, whichever one gets elected, you're going to be drinking from the fire hose. What are the first priorities? What first 100 days, first 30 days, what are your thoughts? What are the first things you're tackling other than redoing the curtains and probably getting new carpet?
Well, one of the biggest powers that the governor has is his power of appointment. The governor makes over 2,000 appointments, everything from TEA commissioner on day one. By the way, I will fire Mike Morath and appoint a new TEA commissioner who is an educator, but also to like the TCEQ that oversees environmental quality, to the PUC utility bill. So there's so much power. The Secretary of State who oversees elections, right? There's so much power there. And that is, my dog always likes to weigh in these conversations.
He's very opinionated.
That is the thing that gets me most excited that you can do right from the beginning, is put in power people who care about Texans and not the special interests. Put in power real Texans who center the concerns of our families and working Texans.
Mr. Cole, I'll ask you the same question. What do the first 30 days look like? What do the first 100 days look like? Like, what are you tackling from the beginning? I know the appointments are an important thing. And so what is it that you're looking at?
Appointments are important. As soon as they come up, you gotta appoint people who really have the interest of ordinary, everyday, hardworking Texans in their heart. It depends how the election goes. If we have a really good night and this state turns blue across the board, I mean, it sounds impossible, but it could happen. Man, we're going to have a great 100 days because we're going to get education right. We're going to get healthcare right. We're going to expand Medicaid. We're going to raise minimum wage. If we get close, I still think we're in good shape because there will be a lot of Republicans out there that are going to be fearful that the seat they were able to hang on to, if they don't get on board and start doing some of these things that most Texans want, anywhere from 60 to 80%, they're going to get voted out the next term. So with that being said, if there is still resistance in that House, leadership matters, but then you've got to use every tool in your toolbox. And that means there's going to be a lot of legislatures being called special session after special session. They're going to have to earn their check because there's certain things, as I said, raising the minimum wage, actually funding our public education and making it better, and expanding Medicaid right away and shoring up our rural healthcare systems and women's healthcare. We've got women's healthcare. Over half our counties are considered maternity care deserts, and that's not Texan. That's being cruel and short-sighted. So we're gonna get to work for Texans when we get there, and the first 100 days is going to be busy.
Representative Hinojosa, what does the budget look like under you? Mr. Cole just talked about his priorities. What are your budgetary priorities, or what are your thoughts around the budget and all that good stuff?
So I just had the pleasure of talking to high school students, and they said, look, if there's one thing you take away from this conversation, I want it to be this. The economy is not some like wild monster that we have no control of. The economy is our making. If it's not working for the people of Texas, then we need to change it, right? And state spending is so much a part of it, and policymaking is so much a part of it, that we have power to build an economy that works for everyday Texans. Right now, it doesn't, and it hasn't for a long time. And if you ask yourself, are you better off today than you were 12 years ago before Greg Abbott became governor? The vast majority of Texans will say no. The future is scary. Some of the things that we propose is cash back for renters, right? We're real focused in this state on property tax cuts for homeowners, but lots of Texans don't own their own home, right? Lots of Texans pay rent. they've never gotten the benefit of property tax breaks, even though they pay as much property tax or they pay a lot of property tax themselves. So we're proposing, and I have a record of voting for, cash back for renters so that they get the benefit of property tax cuts too. Also, something that I was proud to have a press conference on and have Republican mothers stand with me on is wiping the slate clean of the education budget spending, of all the grift and vendor contracts that are going to Greg Abbott's friends, and first paying our teachers their worth so they're amongst the highest paid in the nation. Everybody knows it's not rocket science. That's the number one thing we can do to give our kids a good education, is have a great teacher in the classroom. But we've had an exodus of teachers because they don't get paid and they don't get respected. Fund special education, fund smaller class sizes, and school safety. This is not rocket science, right? We can do this, but there's not the will that the governor has to do it. And so those are some things that we can do in the budget. They are bipartisan and popular. To Bobby's point earlier, there has not been the space to do it because Republicans don't fear the general election voter. They only fear their primary voter. They don't fear accountability. When we picked up 12 seats in 2018, what was the number one priority for the Republicans in charge? School funding, right? We passed a great bill. I was proud to be a part of that. That's because they feared the general election voter.
I appreciate that. I want to move over to you, Mr. Cole, and Representative Hinojosa brought up an interesting thought that popped in my head. So if it's not completely organized, it's because my ADD is all over the place. So I apologize in advance. But one of the biggest frustrations that we have as Democrats, even myself, right, as someone that's active in this process, is we have a lot of folks that get in office. They talk a big game. They talk about how big their hat is, and they talk about how big their thoughts are. But once they get in, they capitulate to Republicans. And, we've seen it, right? There have been times where Democrats were in power in Congress, and yet we didn't accomplish the things that we wanted to accomplish. So how are you going to work with, challenge, or push back against Republicans and those that would seek to stop your agenda?
Well, I am not a career politician. I come from the working class, and this campaign is about showing Texans that we can disagree without tearing each other apart. But with that being said, we absolutely need to be able to focus on solving real problems that are facing Texans, including, affordability in schools and hospitals. And what that's going to take is, I'm not here to capitulate. I am not bought. I don't owe anybody anything other than the respect for the hardworking people who built the state. So when I go to call people out, I'm not going to be thinking in the back of my head, I don't want to piss off my donors or my biggest campaign funder, but I will call them out. And if it requires being tough and holding their feet to the fire, bringing public opinion and the public desire onto them and shining the spotlight on them and calling them out for issues and positions that 70 and 80% of Texans support, I will certainly do it. If there's opportunity to reach across the line and extend a hand and in good support and good fairness, that you don't have a hidden agenda, I'm willing to work with anybody. And but I do think when given the time, you have to stand your ground. Because if they know you're willing to give, they'll just keep pushing.
Representative Hinojosa, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, if you know me, I don't back down. And I was proud to organize the quorum break in 2021. We hadn't had a quorum break in almost 20 years, but it was important to do. We won big for Texans. We preserved voting rights. When we were kept this last time after quorum break and kept in the chamber and forced to sign permission slips in order to leave, I refused. And I instead just broke out of the Capitol because I wasn't going to be signing any permission slip. The voters of Austin elected me to do a job, and I wasn't going to have DPS trailing me and babysitting me, right? So that's just not who I am. I fight back. The thing about this, though, is that all the things we're proposing are popular. I'm running on a populist agenda, and there's a reason it's called that, because it is popular. An economy that works for the people of Texas is not something that is controversial, right? It is what most Texans want. Most Texans get it, that they're being screwed and that the system is working against us. That's why you have Trump now even proposing to do something like legislation I filed and take private equity out of the housing market. Because right now what is happening is private equity is buying up so much housing in this country, and it's not affordable for everyday Texans to buy a home or even rent a home right now because of private equity, right? The system is rigged against us. Trump was right, but now he's trying to rig it for himself. That's the problem. But to propose solutions that are about investing in people, that is immensely popular. And as soon as we win in November, because we will win, and I hope there's a question in here about what are the chances and the odds, because this November is gearing up to be a bigger wave than we saw in 2018. And we all need to be ready to maximize that wave. We will win, and it'll be a new day in Texas. It creates space to do good things for Texans.
So let me follow up on that. And I'm going to ask you the same question, Mr. Cole, is how do we win, right? This is a very overwhelming time. It's a scary time. And I'm not talking about the primary, but I'm talking about how do we flip Texas with you at the head?
Well, look, you're asking me?
Yes.
Okay. Look, I know I can win. That's why I decided to run. It's hard to do this. I still have a kid at home too. I don't take this lightly, but I see here a historic opportunity to make change. When I tell you we're gearing up for a bigger wave, let me tell you that we've seen data that shows the 2025 elections and leading up to 2026, Democrats are overperforming 30% better than we did in 2017 before the 2018 wave. In 2018, remember, we picked up 12 seats in the Texas House. We flipped everywhere. Judges, Houston went like all blue for the first time, right? That was timing. And so while I do think I'm a strong candidate to run for governor, I also know that this timing is right, and we have to take full advantage. It's already happening. This weekend, I was in Tarrant County with Taylor Ramette, who came in first place in an open Senate seat in a gerrymandered red Senate district. It was on nobody's radar, and he came in first against millions of dollars. It happened in Leander the other day for a city council race. We flipped. It just happened in Robstown within the last week. We flipped a mayor's election. It happened in Cy-Fair. This is not because like the DNC is invested and has a strategy. No, this is because it is organically happening, and we have to take full advantage. I'm running on a populist agenda. It is who we are as Texans. It is our history. Back, LBJ's grandfather was part of the Farmers Alliance to organize the people against big industry. We are back there. It is back to our roots. We need to fight for the working people of Texans, and that's why I'm running for governor. And that is a popular position and a winning position in the state.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Cole, what does a win look like under you? Why do you feel you can win? What does the November election look like with you at the head of the party?
Well, I think it's important that I'm not a politician. I think the voting electorate in Texas is looking towards that. They're frustrated with politicians across the board. Here's another thing which I believe in. As an observer, as a voter, I've seen it. Urban turnout in Texas has not been enough. It keeps coming up short. And I know there's certain people out there that have great hopes of spiking turnout and being able to win that way. But the problem is Greg Abbott wins every one of his elections in rural Texas. And I am from rural Texas. I grew up in rural Texas. I have rural Texas stories. I can go out there and resonate with people and win votes. He wins rural Texas on average 70 to 30%. If I can go out there and just strip 10% off him and move it to my column, that is a win for a governor here in Texas. And I'm the only one that can go out in rural Texas and do that. I explained before, my message resonates across the state. So as any good Democrat, I can still go out in urban and suburban Texas and win votes there too, and have strong turnout there too. When you add all that up, I can build the coalition that amongst urban and rural, young and old, among Democrats and independents and Republicans who simply had enough. I can bring them together. I can inspire them, and I can bring this state a victory that makes history. It's absolutely possible. It's why I'm running. I'm running because I feel like I have a duty to act, because Democrats have not broke through. And if we don't break through, our democracy is at stake. Autocracy is afoot. We have an authoritarian as a president, and we have a mini-me authoritarian here in Texas. And so if we don't break through, if you don't run a candidate that can beat Greg Abbott, it will still be a dark night in the nation when you can't capture Texas. And that's why I'm running.
All right. I'd like to give Representative Hinojosa the opportunity to respond about, or you said a lot about, Mr. Cole said a lot about rural Texas and his ability to win that. What is your plan? What are your thoughts around that? I can't hear you, ma'am. That's okay.
I don't doubt his strength in rural Texas. I will tell you, we have a playbook for winning Texas. And the playbook was what we saw in 2018. In 2018, Beto won 64% of the Latino vote. Guess what happens in 2026 when I win 64% of the Latino vote? I win because there's more Latinos, right, than there were in 2018. It's a bigger part of the electorate. 2018 was proof of concept. 2026 is the win. Yes, there's more than one way to win. I firmly believe that. But nobody can win without the Latino vote. It's too big in this state. We need to do better with the rural voters. Yes, I have formed relationships over the last several years over public schools by leading the fight against vouchers. I have football coaches from rural areas, teachers, parents who text me, and superintendents, and who still feed me data in support and hope that we win. So we'll build on those relationships in rural Texas. And but we need to do, let me just be clear. We need to do better amongst everybody. We need to do better in rural Texas. We need to do better with Latinos. We need to do better in urban areas. We need to do better in suburban areas. There's not one silver bullet here. It needs to be an all of the above approach to winning in Texas. We need to offer a winning message, and we need to inspire Democrats to want to vote for us.
So let me ask you, what is a winning message right now amongst working class Texans?
One thing that you hear a lot is affordability, but let's be clear that affordability is not really something you can wrap your head around, right? We need to be proposing real solutions that are helping Texans and getting them excited about the future and a vision for the future that is positive and that will impact them directly. I mentioned before cash back for renters, taking private equity out of the housing market. We have now data centers are popping up all over this state. And it looks like our electric bills are going to go up about $600 a year because of it. Because Greg Abbott said we're going to have more than any other state. Well, data centers should pay for themselves. They're owned by the richest men in the world. We need to stop an economic policy that is investing in Amazon and hoping on a trickle-down impact and invest in working Texans. We propose sales tax cuts for our small businesses. Saturday, small business tax-free after Thanksgiving, right? These are some real ways that we can show we can do things differently It's not about minor tweaks. It's about whole systems change. And that's the kind of vision that we need to communicate to Texans about what they can vote for and what they can hope for under a new governor and under a Democratic governor.
All right. Well, I appreciate you all being here tonight, and I could ask you questions all night, but I'll probably at some point get angry text messages from staffers. So I'm not going to do that to y'all, but I would like to know as we close out this evening, I appreciate you all coming, but as we close out, I want to know, what is your message to all Texans? What is your message to LGBTQ plus Texans? And so share that in your final thoughts as we wrap up this amazing evening. And that first question is for you, Mr. Cole. I apologize. I did not say.
Well, listen, I absolutely believe we have to advocate for fair wages and economic justice in this state. Across this nation, billionaires and corporations and the richest among us keep getting richer and richer while everyday ordinary Texans fall further and further behind. The middle class is shrinking. It's under attack. Proof of this is at the close of the 1970s, 61% of us were middle class. Today it's 50%. Over the same time period, the working poor increased by 30%. It's more than obvious what happened. Not only were we being squeezed, but we were squeezed out. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir. You're still here.
Okay. There's some funny things going on my screen. We've been squeezed. The working class has been squeezed out. Listen, the AI data centers, like Gina mentioned, are an absolute threat. Not only are they wanting to socialize their cost and capitalize their profits, but they're wanting to take our most vital resource to our communities, the water. And here's the thing that's really threatening the future of Texas and young Texans especially. Are we going to use AI to help us become more efficient and use it as a tool for us? Or are we going to let the AI overlords and the bought government that they bought down in Austin, especially with Greg Abbott, are we going to let them set it up where AI is here to replace us? We absolutely got to get in the way of that. And if you're going to get in the way of that, you got to start voting for politicians that want to prioritize that and get in the way of AI. One last thing, the way we're treating immigrants in this country, in this state, is short-sighted. We cannot remain the 7th biggest economy in the world, the 2nd biggest in the state, if we don't figure out immigration. Now, I know as governor, I can't do anything about it, but as the governor of the 2nd biggest economy, I can advocate for a reformed immigration policy and a pathway to citizenship. And to our LGBTQ plus Texans, you are a vital part of this state, and you will always be a vital part of this state. And you will always have somebody in me that will advocate for you and protect you and recognize your value to this state. And I want to thank the Stonewall Democrats for the opportunity tonight. And thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Cole. We definitely have some important decisions to make, but we want to hear from you, Representative Gina Hinojosa. You've stepped up to the plate. What are your closing thoughts? What do you want the LGBT community to know? What do you want all Texans to know about your leadership as we close out this evening?
What I want you to know is your power. We have a power and an opportunity as Texans to be the difference in this country and this state. We have a historic opportunity. I do believe we are living in a moment in history that we didn't ask to be in, but here we are. And so we are called to respond and to fight for what we believe in and to be the difference. What happens in Texas will impact not just our lives in this state, but it'll impact who controls Congress, who controls the Senate, probably, who controls the White House, right? We're getting so big and powerful that we have not just an impact in the nation, but also global impact in this state. We are a world economic powerhouse. There is no reason, given the wealth that we create in this state, why Texans are struggling so mightily. That needs to end, and it will end when I'm elected governor and we are able to prioritize what matters to Texans. What matters to Texans is ensuring that your kids get a quality education and that you can be able to afford college or trade school for your kids so that they have a bright future too. A home that you can be proud of, that you can afford. Right now, housing is more and more unaffordable in Texas. And so many of us, we worry that our kids are good, whether or not our kids will be able to even live in the communities that they grew up in because it's so unaffordable. There are so many things like this that are kitchen table issues that are going on the wrong track in Texas. Polling shows it. Texans believe Texas is headed in the wrong direction and is on the wrong track under Governor Abbott. That's why he distracts us with culture wars and social issues. That's why he punches down at the LGBTQ community, because he is weak. He has a record that is terrible and he doesn't want to own it. So when I'm governor, that stops. We'll see strength is in our unity. Strength is in our diversity. I will lift up all Texans. I can only do this with you all in, like you've never been all in before. This is a heavy lift in November. We can do it. I know we can. We have the power to do it if we know our power, if we use it and we bring it in November. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being with us this evening, Representative Hinojosa. I want to thank everyone that joined us tonight. We certainly have some really big decisions to make as we approach the March 3rd Democratic primary. Listen, if you are not registered to vote, or if you know anybody that's not registered to vote, make sure that they are registered by February 2nd. I also want to point out that we want to make sure that as they're registering to vote, or even if you are registered to vote, that you're looking at your state identification, your driver's license, your Texas ID, then make sure that your state ID and your voter registration have the same address. If they don't, now is the time to make that update. So please make sure you're doing that by February 2nd. Also, if you are over 65, if you are disabled or have some sort of mental incapacity or some sort of incapacity, you can vote by mail. The time to request that ballot to vote by mail is right now. And early voting starts February 17th. It's less than a month away. We're going to start voting, casting our ballots at the polls for those of us that are going to vote in person. And then Election Day is March 3rd. I want to thank everybody that came to join us this evening. We've got some phenomenal people running for Lieutenant Governor and for Governor of Texas. We've got some important decisions to make there. Join us every Sunday night in January. We're going to have a different town hall with a different set of candidates. I want to thank my board of Texas Stonewall for helping to facilitate this, especially Angel Carroll, who's working hard to connect the candidates and whatnot. So I appreciate you all joining us. If you haven't done so, join the fight. Join us at TexasStonewall.com. You can be a member of Texas Stonewall. I believe it's $25 a year in order to become a member and support this work that we're doing. So I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a great night. Have a great week and be safe out there.